Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to FAU Owl Radio for today's episode of Strictly Sports with Jacob Brown. Today is episode 2. Last week we had an amazing show. It was debuted. CJ, Yuri, and I, we really had a great time. But this week we got a lot of stuff to talk about, including FAU football winning what might be one of their biggest games of the year, 35-24 over Western Kentucky. This was a great game for FAU on all fronts. This was a game where they needed to get their passing game going, and they did just that. Chris Robeson went 18 for 29 with 208 yards and 2 touchdowns, did not throw an interception or have a turnover in the game, which is exactly what FAU needed. This Western Kentucky defense was designed to stop the run. They're a great defensive line. FAU did exactly what they needed to do to win this game. On the rushing side, this has been FAU's strength all year, running the ball. That's not what they were focusing on in this game, however. James Charles had 10 rushes on 65 yards, and there were 2 rushing touchdowns, one by Nick Tronti and one by Larry McCammon. Remember, Malcolm Davidson was out with an injury for this game, didn't even travel with the team, so it was just James Charles and Larry McCammon for the game. They did a great job. But that, again, the offense was not run through the running game this week. It was much more quarterback-centric, pass-centric. There were 2 receiving touchdowns this week. Harrison Bryant had 6 receptions, 74 yards. The 2 receiving touchdowns, one of them from Willie Wright, 1 reception for 51 yards, which was probably the play of the game that probably put Western Kentucky away, to be honest. And then Harrison had a reception for a touchdown, 2 receptions for 40 yards. And this was a great game, again, for FAU. This was a game that they needed to win. If they lost, FAU would not have been able to compete for that conference championship. Now you can say it's FAU and Marshall kind of gunning for this end-of-the-year matchup. Who is going to win this side of the conference? The winner, inevitably, is probably going to have to face Louisiana Tech, who's currently undefeated on the other side. They're going to be a tough opponent no matter what, because the conference championship game is going to be at Louisiana Tech either way, because their record is so much higher than ours that most likely FAU is not going to end up with a better record than them in the end. So CJ, you saw the game. What were your observations from the game?
So obviously a huge FAU victory there. I was really impressed with the defense. The defense showed a lot. They were down 14-0 earlier in the game. It wasn't looking good. Personally, as I said last week on the radio show, I feel like FAU's athleticism and their overall roster talent always outweighs a lot of these teams. And I never really felt like the game was out of reach. But the tipping point in the game was when Achilles Leroy made a huge sack, and that fumble, the forced fumble, taking it to the house to go 14-7, literally turned the game on its head. 28 straight points there, and Achilles Leroy ended up getting the Conference USA Defensive Player of the Week with 12 tackles, 2 sacks, and a forced fumble. As you said, Chris Robeson played really well. Scoring 28 unanswered points on the road in a cold weather game when we're not used to playing it, it was a huge performance, and it showed that this FAU team can really run the table the rest of the way and hopefully get into that Conference USA Championship game and get the win.
Yeah, I agree on all fronts there, and FAU has won 6 of their last 7 games after losing the first 2 to Power 5 teams, Ohio State and UCF. Again, I've said it many times, those are 2 games you just can't expect from a non-Power 5 team to win. And again, they played Ohio State pretty well in those final 3 quarters. I'm not trying to say that FAU is equal to Ohio State in any way. I'm just saying they actually did play them pretty well in that game, and it was the first week as well. And then this weekend on Saturday at 6 p.m., FAU will be hosting FIU for the Shula Bowl. We won last year on the road, so I think this year probably going to go the same way. CJ, what about you?
Hopefully we get B.J. Emmons back. He resumes practice. Last week I said he was a 5-star. He's actually a 4-star, but regardless, getting B.J. Emmons back and getting him into the rotation would be huge for the running back group that we have right now. And, yeah, big game this week at home.
Yeah, and so other games that went on in NCAA football this weekend, Georgia beat Florida 24-17. And, based on seedings, this game looks like an upset. Really, though, Georgia is just as good of a team as Florida is. They went on the road. Jake Fromm, in his final year in college, looking to show NFL scouts, hey, I can beat a good defense, and he did. Now, maybe Fromm was not the reason for Georgia winning that game, because more so it was a defensive game than anything, even though it was 24-17. Both teams played a tremendous defensive game. Remember, Georgia just was eating up Florida's running game. They couldn't even get the ground game going on that game. So Georgia now, and here's the thing. everyone wanted Florida to win this game because, Georgia's been winning the last few years. Well, here's the thing. What's the better matchup at the end of the day? Georgia-Bama or Florida-Bama? And I think Georgia-Bama would be a lot better of a game to watch. It could have more implications. I think we'd all like to see Fromm versus Alabama for a third and final time. Let's see if Georgia can finally do it. But we'll find that out later this year. And then I like to mention Notre Dame only beat Virginia Tech by a point. This was a team that for 2 years people have been trying to tell me that they're a top 4 college football seeding. No, they're not. They barely could beat a borderline ACC team, and the ACC isn't even that effective this year. It's one of the worst conferences in football. I mean, you could even argue the AAC in the group of 5 might be stronger than the ACC is this year. That's how poor it's been all year. But Notre Dame at this point, just join a conference. You're the only team that's not in a conference. Just join a conference. They belong in the ACC, quite frankly, because they're kind of at that ability level of those other teams. I think that they would, really make themselves look a lot better if they had to face Clemson every year instead of whoever they wanted. So that's how college football went this weekend. This upcoming weekend, though, we have some amazing games. It's one of the best weeks of college football all season. We have Penn State, Minnesota on Saturday. And what at the beginning of this year, most people probably would not have looked at this game and said, hey, this is going to mean something at this late in the year, but it does. Penn State, behind Ohio State, is the second best team in the Big Ten. They're better than Michigan. They're better than Wisconsin even. Penn State's the number 6 team in this country right now, and they're going into Minnesota on the road to face them. I think Penn State ultimately will win the game, but definitely an interesting one for sure. We also have Iowa, Wisconsin. Wisconsin's kind of out of it now that they've lost a game. I don't really see them going anywhere, but it's just going to be an intriguing matchup. Wisconsin looks like they'll probably pull through on that one. And then the huge game of the weekend, and we'll get into this a lot more a little bit later on in the show as well, but LSU-Bama is the game of the year, essentially, on Saturday night. Actually, Saturday afternoon at 3:30. CJ, the game's in LSU, am I correct?
I believe that it is in Tuscaloosa.
Oh, okay. So that changes things. So if the game, here's the thing. This game is going to be talked about all week. It's the game of the week, the game of the year, like I said. And we're looking here. Yes, it is in Tuscaloosa, so that changes things.
LSU had Florida at home and Auburn at home, I believe. So if they would have taken Bama at home as well, that wouldn't have been very fair. Yeah,
right. So they had to play one of these rivalry games on the road. It just had to be, Alabama. So here's the thing with Alabama. This is how I look at them. This is not even a lie, people. They have the weakest schedule of any team in the Power 5. Not just the SEC, not just 2 conference. They have the weakest schedule of any Power 5 team in the country. So they might be ranked number 2 right now, but they haven't faced anyone. Their best opponent was Texas A&M on the road, and they beat the crap out of them. So Alabama's going to be hosting LSU this weekend. This game is going to prove to me, is Alabama real or not? This is the opponent that they need to beat. And to be honest with you, I think this is the one year that LSU can do it because Joe Burrow has played a tremendous year at quarterback. This is finally the first year where you can say LSU has an offense. They've always been defensive dependent. They always had to depend on their defense, and now they have Joe Burrow and that offense rolling in LSU. I actually think they're going to go on the road this weekend and beat Alabama. I think this is the year that Alabama takes a little bit of a step back. Now I'm going to move, and again, these are all topics we're going to address again a little bit later in the show. I'm going to move on to the NFL now, and I'm going to start with the Cleveland Browns. So they lost to the Denver Broncos this weekend on Sunday. This was, people, let's just put it this way, this was the game they had to win, okay? This is probably the weakest game on their schedule all year. Maybe take away the Bengals games because the Bengals are also pretty horrible. But listen, Denver doesn't have an offense. They had a quarterback in there, Allen. He had never had a snap in his entire life in the NFL. And now the Cleveland Browns, in a must-win game, couldn't even beat him. And, this is the most popular question that's been asked about the Browns. What's wrong with the Browns? Well, the question I ask in return is, what was ever right with the Browns? This team hasn't been right in years. Remember, they were 0-16 2 years ago. They won their first game in 2 years last year. I mean, at this time last year, they were still on the quest to get that first victory. So people forget that. You don't just get Baker Mayfield, who he might have been picked number 1, but he doesn't look like a number 1 overall quarterback right now, and that's for sure. Excuse me. And you get Odell Beckham, so everyone freaks out because it's Odell Beckham Jr. Well, you got to get the ball to Odell, and Baker hasn't been able to do that. Jarvis Landry, another guy who was thriving last year, With this addition with Odell Beckham Jr., Landry's production has gone way down. Their tight end Njoku has been out for the season. Nick Chubb, to be quite honest with you, he's been one of the only reasons that this Cleveland team might have 2 wins right now. He's essentially led that offense this year, and it'll be interesting to see how they balance his playtime out with Kareem Hunt coming off a suspension this week, I believe, which should be interesting to fantasy owners out there. By the way, guys, I've been stuffing Kareem Hunt on my roster all year on my bench, just waiting for right now, seeing if he can maybe be useful for me at this time in the year. But here's the thing, anyway. What was ever right with the Browns? We all expected them somehow to be a division winner and to be a Super Bowl contender. Meanwhile, they're not close to that. Their coach never coached before. He was a coordinator. Their quarterback had half a season under his belt, and while he looked really good, this was the year that, A, it could have been a sophomore slump, and B, people had time to prepare for him. People expected, you get Odell Beckham, you expect 10 wins and a Super Bowl appearance. No. One wide receiver does not make you a playoff team, even if he's, as remarkably talented as Odell Beckham Jr. is. But some of the story here, Cleveland, I get it. People expected them to go far. I didn't. So to me, they're not really, under expectations here. I just think that, they were expected to do a little bit too much this year. And now moving on to Baltimore and New England. So last week, for some reason, I picked the Baltimore Ravens to beat the New England Patriots. I actually said it on the air that day. I didn't even know why. It was just a gut feeling, and I never go with my gut. So I figured, you know what? First show I'm doing, I'm going to go with my gut, and I picked Baltimore, and it worked. Now, here's the thing. I thought this game would be low scoring. It wasn't. Baltimore scored 37 points against a Patriot defense that hasn't just been the best defense in the NFL. It's been historically good through 8 weeks, or 9 weeks, 10 weeks. However, the Patriots defense wasn't really facing anyone until they faced Baltimore. Baltimore was the first opponent this year that they faced that gave them a little bit of challenge, and boy, did they get exploited. Lamar Jackson proved last night he might be one of the best runners, if not the best runner at quarterback that we've ever seen. That man knows how to elude defenses like no one else. He might even be better as Russell Wilson and Mahomes as a runner. I mean, really, he is agile. He knows what to do. CJ, you have an observation here?
He is 11th in the NFL in rushing yards. And he's
as a quarterback. And we're going to go over later today, we're going to go over top 10 running backs in the league. I mean, you might as well put Lamar on that list. But the passing game, I've said, in the past, he needs to get that going. Last night made me change my tune on that because what Baltimore has realized, what John Harbaugh has realized, what that ownership has realized, upper management, you need to just play him to his strengths. Don't make Lamar Jackson do something that he can't do, which is be a guy who's going to throw 500 yards a game. He played 4 years at Louisville. He was in the NFL last year. He was playing this year. Everyone knew he's not a guy that's going to throw 400, 500 yards a game. So you got to work with that. And what has Baltimore done? They have hammered down on Lamar working on his running and being a dependable runner for them. And it worked last night against the team. By the way, again, Patriots had the best defense in the NFL, not just this year, but historically, and Lamar ran all over them. So, CJ?
So, Jalen Hurts is not the same player Lamar Jackson is in terms of the way he runs offense, but the way Lamar Jackson's performing and how everyone kind of wrote him off before the draft and teams were asking him to work out at running back, wide receiver, a multitude of positions. He's really helping out Jalen Hurts and quarterbacks that are, I guess, a wild card going into the draft with not the best throwing motions, but they get the job done, they win, they move the chains. So Lamar Jackson is also doing a service for all those quarterbacks in college football too, and it's honestly nice to see that he's been able to prove all the haters wrong. And not only is he doing that, I mean, in that draft you had Josh Rosen picked ahead of him, Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, Josh Allen, and he's arguably the most successful quarterback out of those guys.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
and
I would say undeniably.
Running back. And I love it when he gets up in front of the presser, and he's like, yeah, not bad for a running back. I love it. Good for him.
Yeah, and I also love, too, after last night's win, he said we still got another game to play next week. So he's not like Baker Mayfield who, he's more interested in making commercials and making a profit and, caring about what he looks like. Lamar's out here saying, hey, I just beat the Patriots. We got another week ahead of us. Meanwhile, Cleveland would be celebrating right now because it's all they've ever had to celebrate over. But let's move on to the NBA now real quick. So Golden State's done. Steph Curry, the report, I don't believe it had come out while we were filming last week's show, But Steph is out for 3+ months with a broken hand already. They lost Livingston. They lost Iguodala. They lost Kevin Durant. They lost Klay Thompson for the season, or supposedly they've lost him for the season. They lost DeMarcus Cousins. This team has just lost too much to make the playoffs. I had them in an 8 seed last week when we made our predictions, but to me, they won't even come close to that. So if I had to pick an 8 seed now, it'd probably be Dallas or New Orleans or someone like that. But Golden State just doesn't have enough now to make the playoffs. Again, no Steph, no KD, no Klay, no Livingston. You're not going to win basketball games like that. D'Angelo Russell and Draymond Green cannot carry this team for 3 months. It's just not going to happen. Other teams in the NBA, the Los Angeles Lakers have gotten off to a tremendous start. I believe they're 5-1 on the season. They've had great wins. That game against Dallas, I woke up that morning and saw that dunk that LeBron made. Oh, my good. LeBron James looks like LeBron James again, and that should scare people in the NBA. But the Lakers are clicking on all fronts so far. Everyone said, it might be a little tough, LeBron AD playing together. No, they've played fantastically so far. The only team that they've been shut down by is the Clippers, and that's understandably so because that might be one of the few teams that's actually better than them right now in the NBA. And now I'm going to shift to the NHL here, and I'm going to talk about the NHL real quick. So this is a sport that I like to give notice to. It's a pro sport too. There's 4 major sports in America, and this is the one that gets paid attention to the least. I've been a huge hockey fan my whole life. Like I said last episode, I love the Rangers. CJ, you're a Panther fan, right?
Yes, sir.
You do like the Panthers. So, yeah, CJ's a Panthers fan here. We love hockey, and we want to talk about it. So right now, after their Stanley Cup victory 2 years ago, the Washington Capitals are atop the Metropolitan. Last year, they took a little bit of a step back, and that's understandable. It is hard in hockey to make the playoffs consistently, but it's especially hard to win a cup and then come back in the playoffs and win a cup again. So, of course, the Capitals were going to take a step back. It takes a lot of energy to make the Stanley Cup, a lot of effort. You need some downtime, and we've seen that. The Los Angeles Kings, the Chicago Blackhawks, the New York Rangers, those are 3 teams a few years ago that made the Stanley Cup Finals, Western Conference, Eastern Conference Finals, and now it's been years now where they've had to, kind of rebuild. Took them a long time to recover. Now you're seeing it with the Lightning. Years and years of making the playoffs, playing more games than everyone else, and now this year they're taking a step back. And so the Capitals had that last year. Now they're leading the Metropolitan. The Islanders are actually doing pretty well this year. Last year they had that great second half, carrying it into this year. The Boston Bruins went to the Stanley Cup Finals last year, and they're still in first place. And Boston's a great team. I just don't think that they're going to make the Stanley Cup Finals. I actually think the Capitals are going to go again. I think Ovechkin's going to look at this East and say, hey, there's not a Tampa Bay Lightning this year. There's not that number 1 team that's better than us. So I think the Capitals can say that they're the best in the East right now. You have the Pittsburgh Penguins, who had a very intriguing offseason, currently in a wild card. The Maple Leafs through 15 games, only 7-5-3. They're in a second wild card position right now. I would say they're definitely underperforming. You got Austin Matthews on your team. You should probably be doing better. The Florida Panthers right now are 3 seed in the Atlantic Division. I see them kind of faltering by the end of the season. Again, you got Toronto and Montreal in your division. They're going to be there. They're not going anywhere. Florida, I think this is a developmental year for them. They just got Joel Quenneville. Give them another year before you expect playoffs out of them. Also, Buffalo in a playoff spot right now. Jack Eichel, like I said, hey, Austin Matthews, he should be in a playoff spot right now. Connor McDavid should be in a playoff spot. Good for the Sabres. Eichel is leading them to a playoff spot right now. If you look at the Metropolitan, other teams in there, the Carolina Hurricanes improving off last year. And then right now, the Tampa Bay Lightning wouldn't even make the playoffs, which is pretty hilarious to me. Then you go to the West. In the Central Division, you have the Blues atop with the Predators and Avalanche behind them. I think those 3 are probably going to stay the same in the Central, even though the Blues, they just lost Vladimir Tarasenko for 5-6 months. He's getting shoulder surgery, so we'll see how that affects them. But if you look at the rest of that division, they really only have Arizona, Winnipeg, Dallas, and I think even without Tarasenko, the Blues are still better. The Predators, they're there every year. I think they'll make the playoffs. The Avalanche, young, upcoming team, had a great offseason. They're currently in a playoff spot. In the Pacific, after 2 years of underperforming from the Oilers, they're leading the Pacific Division. Then you have Canucks and the Ducks behind them. The Ducks weren't even supposed to contend this year. They're in a playoff spot. And then the 2 wild cards are the Vegas Golden Knights and the Calgary Flames, 2 teams who are very highly regarded. I actually think the West is going to stay like this. I think these 8, and I know that's really hard to say early on, but I like these 8 in the West. I don't think Arizona has enough. I think Winnipeg lost too much in the offseason. I think Dallas is too old. Minnesota and San Jose are severely underperforming. By the way, Sharks might be the biggest chokers of the NHL over the last few years. They definitely missed their chance to win a cup. But if you look at the NHL this year, I think the East, way more competitive than the West is. Again, like I just said, the West probably more top-heavy than the East is. I think those 8 are going to stay together, whereas the East, I think, you've got teams right now like the Lightning, the Blue Jackets. They're out of playoff positions right now. They're not going anywhere. You've got the Canadians and the Maple Leafs in wildcard positions. Look for them to definitely start pushing for division positions as we move forward later in the year. And so that's it for this part of the show. We had that first half. We're going to take a break here. I'm Jacob Browne. This is CJ Uri. We'll be back with the second half of the show after the break. CJ Uri on to discuss all the things we just talked about and a little bit more as well. We have some other games to play later, NFL picks. We have our running back rankings and stuff like that we're going to play at the end of the show. But for new listeners that are on the show, I just want to explain what this show is about really quick. The title is Strictly Sports, and chose that name because I just want this show to stick to sports. I don't want it to involve anything else. We just want to talk about sports the whole time. We're going to be talking about collegiate and pro sports at both levels. We love football, basketball, hockey, baseball, anything. If you love sports and you're interested in joining FAU Owl Radio, you can come to us. We're on the second floor of the station. We'd love to have you on as a guest. If you're a football player, basketball player that's listening, we would love to have you on as well and get your insights on your teams. Of course, any other FAU athlete is welcome as well. And so now we're going to get kick-started here on the second half of the show. So, CJ, we're going to start with the NBA. And I know we were talking a little bit out there about the NBA. So what are some quick thoughts that you had about the NBA?
So Russell Westbrook this week is out versus Memphis, but I want to give a little spotlight to my Miami Heat, who are looking very dangerous through 6 games. They're 5-1, and Kendrick Nunn and Tyler Hero have the most points by a rookie pair since 1959 with 194 through 6 games. And LeBron James does not show any signs of slowing down whatsoever. That Mavs performance was vintage LeBron. He was gassed up completely in overtime, took the game, just took over in this game, and that dunk was just unbelievable. Just a side note here, I still really like the Sixers to win the East. They're 5-1 as well, I believe. No, they're 5-0. They're 5-0, and they look really good. It's not that the Milwaukee Bucks haven't looked good through 6 games. They're 4-2. It's still really early, but I still really like this Philadelphia 76ers team this year. Hopefully they've put all the drama beside them. And, they showed some real grit in that T-Wolves game with Embiid and Karl Anthony Towns. But yeah, and I do really, really like the Lakers in the West. And I liked them before the season. But seeing that LeBron had a full offseason of rest the first time in his career, it looks like it's making the difference, and he looks incredible. And if he is on his game, he's still the best player in the world. So, yeah, that's what I have for the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you there. And here's the thing: the Lakers can be incredibly dangerous this playoff round because here's the thing: they have height. Dwight Howard is big, AD is big, LeBron James is big. They might be getting Andre Iguodala in a week and a half or two because there's that whole situation going on right now with the Grizzlies about the buyout. So if LeBron can get some of these guys, they're tall, they're defensive guys who can also shoot. They can go places in these playoffs, and I really think the only type of teams that are going to be in their way, maybe a team like the Jazz, a team you might not take seriously, but they're tremendous defensively. And they might get you in a playoff series, in a short series. And, of course, the Clippers with Kawhi and Paul George eventually. Those are really, though, the only 2 teams in the West that I say, oh, boy, the Lakers better watch out. But they've been playing tremendous basketball so far. And about the Heat, man, they've got a great young core. Last week when we did the show, I don't believe Jimmy Butler had even played a game yet. And now we've finally been able to see him play with the rest of those boys. down there in Miami, and they're planning for that 2021 offseason when they have a bunch of free, or not they, but the NBA is going to have a ton of free agents in the 2021 offseason, and Pat Riley and Miami are currently planning on opening up their salary cap situation for that year to maybe pair someone else with Jimmy Butler. You know, everyone's been asking, why would Jimmy Butler come to Miami? He's ruining his career. No, he's not. Got a great young core. Kendrick Nunn, Tyler Hero. Money's coming on the way with other stars. They almost got Bradley Beal in the offseason. Let's see what they do at the deadline. I like the Heat a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. The Jimmy Butler move, people criticized him for leaving the Sixers because they were a bona fide contender. But he's looking pretty smart right now. Not that the Sixers aren't looking good, but they weren't really prepared to give him the full max that he wanted. He goes to Miami, gets the max, and I guess he saw what other people didn't see. And hey, they got two rookies that at the end of the year could both be contenders for Rookie of the Year. I mean, going forward, that team is really young, and they're starting to become an appealing destination to free agents going forward. But this season, I mean, I don't know any teams that would want to play them round one. So.
Agreed on that, and now we're going to shift back to the National Hockey League, and I mentioned the Panthers briefly, but CJ's got some quick notes here on the Florida Panthers.
So you had said that they are in a developing year. I disagree there. They dished out almost $10 million a season to Sergei Bobrovsky, who is a two-time Vezina Trophy winner, and their whole roster is really in a win-now mode. Not necessarily win now as in a Stanley Cup. I don't expect them to win a Stanley Cup, but to me, the goal is to get past the first round for the first time since 1996, which is the only time they got past the first round, and they made it to the Stanley Cup. So the Panthers are in a full win-now mode. Hopefully that happens this year. I think it will. Up the middle they got Barkov, Trocheck, and then on the wings they have very capable guys. And their bottom six is looking the best that it has in the past few years. But I agree with Tampa Bay right now. They are 6-5-2, but I wouldn't be worried. I would not be worried at all if I was a fan. They still have the best roster in the league, hands down.
Yeah.
And if Vasilevsky gets hot, they're the toughest team to beat, hands down. Their roster is incredible. I feel like they just stumbled a little bit out of the gate, but I wouldn't be worried. Washington at 11-2-3. I still think that the Boston Bruins are the best team in the East.
Okay.
And here's why. They have played 13 games opposed to Washington's 16 games, and they're only 3 points out of the number one seed in the East. That top line could very well be the best line in hockey. Marchand, Bergeron, Pastrnak, incredible.
Pastrnak's a stud.
On top of it, I mean, Boston's just a horrific place to play if you're on the road. This place just goes nuts. So I still think the Bruins are number one in the East, and the Buffalo Sabres are doing the same thing to us that they did last year. Through X amount of games, I think it was 15-20, they were the number one team in the league. Right now they have 20 points. That's gonna end up tailing off soon here. It's just not sustainable for them. I still think they need a few pieces to really compete. You're seeing now that the Maple Leafs needed to invest a little bit more in their defense. They've put most of their money in their offense and really into
four guys. Yeah, three or four guys. Yeah.
Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, and then John Tavares. I mean, obviously all three of those guys are incredible, but you need to have a defense. You got to have guys that are clearing the crease, guys that are getting the puck out. So the other teams are going into their building and having sustained puck possession in the offensive zone, which you can't have. But I still like the Maple Leafs to win this year and get to the playoffs, and praying to God that they get out of the first round and they don't see the Bruins, because two straight years they see the Bruins lose Game 7. Out in the West, I really like the Edmonton Oilers this year. Normally people would say, well, that means you really like Connor McDavid. Yeah, Connor McDavid's incredible, probably best hockey player in the league, but Leon Draisaitl's helping him out this year. He's got 26 points through 15 games.
He had a great year last year as well.
He had a great year last year. I mean, Connor McDavid has had some injury problems over his career, but he's still probably the fastest player in the league.
Right.
With the puck on his stick. He's just a magician out there. He's incredible. And in the West, I really like the Avs to win the Central Division. I think the Avs are incredible and a really good team. McKinnon, Rantanen, Landeskog, he's out for a while, but McKinnon's next level. He's a next level guy. He's really just that good. And Tarasenko's out. I like the Blues.
Yeah.
As a team, they're a really good hitting team. But I think that you're going to really see the effects of losing a guy that can put the puck in the back of the net pretty soon here. And the Blues, at 21 points right now through 15 games played, are number 1 in Central Division. I can almost guarantee you will see that drop off. Not to the point where they're not in the playoffs. They'll make the playoffs, but they're not going to win their division. And I really do believe the Predators, Avalanche, and Jets will all three of those teams make the playoffs one way or another in the Central
Really,
Division.
you think Winnipeg? I just think Winnipeg lost a little bit too much in the off season. I don't think they can make up for it. But
so Blake Wheeler and Mark Scheifele might be one of the most underrated duos in the league, alongside Barkov, Huberdeau, and there's a few other pairings out there, but Blake Wheeler and Mark Scheifele do not get the media that they deserve, and they're incredible together. Patrick Laine, people forget how good Patrick Laine actually is. They did lose Dustin Byfuglien, but, they're going to overcome that. Kyle Connor, getting him to that contract was huge, keeping him on the team, and Connor Hellebuck, I think he's going to have a bounce-back year. Last year was not a good year for him, but this year I think he's going to have a bounce-back year. But Winnipeg's also one of those tough places to play, and I can 100% see them getting into the playoffs. The West is definitely not as entertaining as the East this year, and you can't really say that about most sports. The West in
yeah, right. I mean, in the NBA, clearly the West is the better conference. I mean, you've got probably 10, 11 teams that are all battling for those 8 spots, whereas in the East, those 7, 8 seeds might not even be playoff teams in the West or even in that bubble. But I would like to go off something you said. I should have given more respect to the Bruins there. I didn't really mention them a lot. They did go to the Stanley Cup Finals, okay? They've got a lot of veterans that have been there a long time as well. They've been here for years. And watch out for the Bruins. The Capitals are not the only team in the East. I should have made that more clear. And I agree with you wholeheartedly on Colorado. I think they've got a lot of skill guys. Nathan McKinnon, like you said, is a great leader, unbelievable. It took him a few years to get to this point, though. Last year's that was the year where he, kind of fully blossomed, and this year he's just an all-out superstar for those Colorado Avalanche. So now we're going to move on to FAU football, and we're going to preview the Shula Bowl a little bit more in this segment about FAU. But first off, I just want to mention something really quickly. So this weekend in college football, FSU lost to Miami at home. And for the last year and a half, almost all of FSU's fan base has been calling for Willie Taggart to be fired as the head coach of FSU. Well, it finally happened yesterday, and there was this little tiny rumor that sparked this morning on CBS Sports that said Lane Kiffin, the head coach of our very Florida Atlantic Owls, was interested in this FSU head coaching position, but that got taken down a little bit later because Lane Kiffin responded on Twitter a few hours later, debunking the theory, just essentially saying that he's not going to go to FSU. He's fully committed to FAU. So we just wanted to squash that rumor here. Obviously, anything can happen, and maybe Lane Kiffin really is thinking about going to FSU. But then the question is, does FSU want Lane Kiffin? So, we know Lane Kiffin might have an interest, but then the question is, what about FSU? So now back to actual FAU football now. So they played an amazing game, must-win game against Western Kentucky. What are your biggest takeaways from that game, CJ?
I say my biggest takeaway from that game is that the defense can not only help win a football game, but they can completely turn it around in FAU's favor. And I don't know where that game would have gone if Achilles Leroy did not get that sack, forced fumble, take it to the house. I mean, it was 14-0 pretty quickly. The offense wasn't looking good. The defense looked great. For Western Kentucky, the defense was looking great, but FAU defense really came together there and was like, we got to get the ball back to them. We just got to give the ball back to Robeson and let those guys go to work as many times as possible here. And they stopped the bleeding. It was 14-0 pretty quick. The ball was back in Western Kentucky's hands really quickly. And, as a defense, you don't get that much time to breathe on the sideline. It's cold there. They really came together. And my biggest takeaway from that game is, that's a huge team win. You didn't see FAU put up, it wasn't 59-54. It wasn't, even 40-42. It was, the defense really tightened up, and that's all you can really ask for going forward. And, that's huge because if they do end up getting Conference USA Championship, their defense is going to have to be at an A game when they play Louisiana Tech.
Agreed on that. And one other thing that I haven't mentioned is like you said, it was a team victory, but the resiliency is something that I really took notice of. down 14-0, and then to respond with 28 unanswered points. That's a statement right there from FAU. On the road, to come back, go on a run like that, that's huge for those games later in the year when you got to go possibly to LA Tech and play them in the Conference USA Championship. Now FAU's proven they can kind of play on the road.
Yeah, absolutely. Playing on the road, our guys aren't used to playing in those cold weather games, and people underestimate how much that really does affect you. But when you constantly practice in 80-degree weather, and then you go over to Western Kentucky, it's 49, 48 degrees out there. So, yeah, big win on the road, and defensively it was really fun to watch. I had seen Achilles Leroy and that defense go to work against Ohio State. I mean, after they put up 28 in the first quarter, but they looked really good after that. And then from then on, I hadn't seen like that hunger and that like we got to get a stop. And it seems like when we're down and the defense is like we got to get a stop, they make it happen. So, and we are FAU is the only team to put up. I think we've scored the most points on Ohio State the whole year out of all the teams they've faced. So that alone's huge. So. Yeah, I mean, FAU football is looking up, and especially going into next year. I mean, obviously that's premature to say this now, but I mean, we're not playing in Ohio State week 1 next year, or Wisconsin, any of those teams. We're playing Minnesota. So, on the note of Lane Kiffin and the FSU rumor today, I think he really wants to build a sustained winner here and get this team in school its first Power 5 win and potentially undefeated season, whatever it might be. He's locked in here, and it was really nice to see him immediately squash the rumors instead of playing around with them today.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you on that. And so now let's look here. We got next on the schedule here. You want to do NCAA quarterbacks? We'll rank them?
Sure.
All right, so what are your top 5? And by the way, we're judging these top five for the NFL draft, not top 5 quarterbacks overall in NCAA football.
So I'd say I think it's unfair to not rank Tua number 1 as he has done his job. And what upsets me a lot is people will say, well, he's got an NFL talent offensive line, he's got an NFL talent wide receiver group. Okay, well, that's what he's going to have in
the
year.
NFL.
So he's performing, with these guys around him that are all going to be next level for the most part. I mean, you're playing Alabama offensive line, most of these guys go pro. And Henry Ruggs III and Jerry Jeudy, that wide receiver core is just incredible. He's, people underestimate the speed of these guys, and he's hitting them, on these slants, these go routes, just right in the hands, put it right in the breadbasket, put it in the numbers, and he's playing great football. And he's had a few nagging ankle injuries, but, I mean, his stats are incredible. So, Tua number 1. But I really do believe that this week, Joe Burrow can get up to number 1 with a win.
I agree with you.
Has to be a win, obviously, but to go into Bama and get a win would be huge for his draft stock. His draft stock's already high up there. I could see him being a top 10 pick as the year goes on, and then the combine comes around. But Joe Burrow's my number 2. He's playing great football. Good story, too, losing the job at Ohio State, going to LSU. Didn't have the best year last year, but this year he's just lights out. The guy's incredible. And, I do believe that Joe Burrow can go into Bama this week and get a win. It's going to be a huge quarterback battle. I mean, these two are the 2 best quarterbacks right now in the league.
Right.
In the league, in NCAA. So we'll see where that goes. But Joe Burrow, number 2.
Yep.
I've been high on this guy for a while because of his height. His overall arm strength, I believe, is the best in NCAA football out of these guys right now going into the draft. Justin Herbert. Mm-hmm. Oregon. The ceiling for this guy's really high, and they really needed to beat Auburn early in the season. Losing that game and them slipping in the rankings really hurt them.
It's going to hurt them, yeah.
Ranking wise, but they're up now to I believe number 7.
Yep,
number 7. So they're within shouting distance of the top 4. Do I believe they're going to get in the top 4? No. They have to win out, win Pac-12, and hope for a few losses, but I doubt they do. I would love to see a college football, as a Dolphins fan, I would love to see a college football playoff of Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, Tua Tagovailoa, all in the same college football. So I'm like, great. I can see all these guys go to work on prime time, and who's the best, you know?
Right, in your stadium. It's almost like you're seeing the future, right?
Yep, exactly.
Which we'll get to in a second, by the way.
And then at 4, I have Jalen Hurts. As I mentioned earlier in the show, Lamar Jackson's doing him a good deed right now in the NFL, a guy that's been written off before and has proven all the doubters wrong, and Jalen Hurts has done just that. I mean, that loss recently was definitely a blemish there, but it was 100% not his fault. The Oklahoma Sooners still put up over 40 points. The defense couldn't get a stop. Him and CeeDee Lamb are hooking up for God only knows how many touchdowns and yards. They look great. I like Jalen Hurts a lot. He moves the ball down the field. And then number 5, I have Bryce Love. Not too much about this guy. People are high on him. NFL draft scouts are high on him. But, I feel like he's one of those quarterbacks right now that, there's only so many quarterbacks going into the draft, so you got to hype up a few of them. And he's one of those guys. But he's got great statistics, so that's my 5.
Well, I agree with you on most of that. I think I got my only difference here is that for the NFL, at least, just from what I've seen, just the eye test, I like Burrow better for the NFL. I think he's got the bigger arm. I think he's more of a traditional quarterback. There's something about a lefty quarterback that I just don't, there's just not a great thought associated with that. We've seen Tim Tebow come in the league and not do very well. There's not very many lefty quarterbacks that succeed in general. Another thing about Tua, I worry about his body. He seems a little bit stocky in the lower half. I think he needs to get a little bit leaner. And his throws on the run concern me a little bit for the NFL. Not saying he isn't talented. I'm just saying let's pump the brakes on him being the next coming of the great quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah.
But
a lot of people are comparing him to Russell Wilson.
Yeah, pump the brakes. It's Russell Wilson.
I feel like it's sort of fair. I feel like there is a comparison to be had there. But yeah, people need to definitely pump the brakes on the Tua is a gold jacket candidate before he's even thrown a ball in the NFL.
Right. I mean, did he win the Heisman last year, Tua? I don't think he did. I mean, I don't think he's even won a Heisman yet. So we're already comparing him to Russell Wilson. He hasn't even won a Heisman. But this weekend, by the way, and I've been saying all these things about Tua, but I do not want this game to decide if Burrow or Tua is better. Reason being, Tua is going to be a little bit banged up going into the game. So I don't think you can really fully compare him and Burrow to each other in this week's game, even though it's a head-to-head matchup. And you could say, well, if Tua's playing, you got to judge him equally. Doesn't matter if he's injured or not. But I'm just saying, Tua's going to be a little bit banged up. We'll see how he does this weekend and how we can compare the two.
Kyler Murray won.
Right, that's right.
Last year, by the way.
Yeah, so Kyler won last year. Tua's probably not going to win the Heisman this year because I don't think they're going to win the national championship.
If it were up to me, Chase Young would be getting the Heisman and the first ever defensive player. The first defensive guy to get a Heisman would be Chase Young. He's just incredible. But
yeah, and a lot of people have a problem with that for some reason, with defensive guys getting the Heisman. It's like, no, I mean, he impacts Ohio State at a level that you can't even think about. I mean, this guy against Wisconsin, he was going through that Wisconsin team, which is a really successful team, and he was dominating Michigan as well. So more on the quarterbacks. So obviously I have Tua at 2. I've got, let's see here. I got Herbert at 3. I think he's probably better suited for the NFL than Jalen Hurts is. I've got Hurts at 4, and I've got Jacob Eason at 5, who I like a lot. I've seen a few games from him, and I like his accuracy a lot, and I like his build. And then I had Jake Fromm on the outside. It's just that this season for me has taken his stock way down, not just because of the team, but just because he hasn't looked as good. But one thing that the CBS crew pointed out during that Florida-Georgia game is that the Georgia receivers are not at the level that Fromm is used to, which to me is a little bit of excuse-making there. But let's see what Fromm can do maybe with the right coach in the NFL. So we've been talking about all these quarterbacks, and this is a perfect segue into the Miami Dolphins. Because supposedly this whole season has been about tank for Tua. Let's tank for Tua. And then they beat the Jets on Sunday. And now they have just as many wins as the Jets, which means the Jets are going to get that number 1 overall pick if the season ended today, and the Dolphins would get the 2. What are your thoughts, CJ, on the Dolphins?
So, as a longtime Fins fan, it's always win first. Always win first. And yesterday was a great win in the fact that Adam Gase and the New York Jets come to Miami and lose. I do not like Adam Gase one bit.
Rightfully so.
I feel like people are starting to realize over in New York that he's not the best player, mentor, players coach kind of guy. I mean, there's always conflicting reports about who he wants in, who he wants out. And, I mean, it was nice to see that Le'Veon Bell took to Twitter and said, like, it's trust the process. Like, I want to be in New York. And it was nice to see Jamal Adams say, like, I never wanted to leave New York or whatever. But that's just locker room drama at the end of the day. It's good for the fans to hear it, but then you go in the locker room as a player, you don't know who this guy wants in and out. Nice to see Adam Gase get a loss. But in terms of the number 1 overall draft pick, I think it hurt the Dolphins a lot, and more than people are saying. So they still have around a 50% chance to get the number 1 pick. But the thing is the more and more guys that they offload, the more and more starters that they're trading away, the more draft picks they accumulate, somehow the Dolphins are playing better every week. Every single week they seem to play better. They're more in the game. They're looking dangerous after the first quarter, second quarter against these teams that come in and they're like, oh, this is an easy win. I mean, and I guess for the number 1 overall draft pick, I feel like it's going to be the Bengals at this point. We play the Bengals. The Dolphins play the Bengals. I think week 14, week 15. They've benched Dalton. They're in full lose now mode.
Yep.
They've got a pretty tough schedule, but I mean, Preston Williams is now out for the season. I don't know, the depth chart well enough. They have Devontae Parker, a wide receiver, but I don't know who's going to take Preston Williams' spot in his starting role. But I mean, if the Dolphins go into that Bengals game with 1 win, that's going to be like prime television, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, the Tank Bowl Part 2.
Literally. I mean, they play the Jets again. The Jets look terrible. Sam Darnold looks awful.
It's amazing too because they beat the Cowboys.
Yeah.
And then since then they've just looked horrible. And it was a lot to expect maybe for Sam Darnold to come back from mono and expect him to win football games. But at the same time, if Sam Darnold was not 100%, they should not have brought him back. And maybe they should have just taken the L. But going back to the Dolphins, what was the point of all this? I mean,
the point's still to lose. I mean, they're 1-8. Or like 1-7.
Yeah,
I mean,
but now you don't.
That's a horrible record, and they still play the Bills. They still play the Patriots. They play the Browns. They have a tough schedule to go forward, especially with the talent they have on the roster. But as a fan, when you're accumulating these draft picks, and every night you go to bed waiting for April to come around with the draft in Las Vegas, and you wake up Monday morning and you're like, okay, the Dolphins won. I mean, great, we got our win. I didn't want to go 0-16. There's only been like a couple 0-16 teams over the years. I never wanted to go 0-16.
Right.
But the Steelers won. We have their draft pick. And then the Texans won. So those 3 draft picks that we had, all 3 of them in 1 week, their value degraded a little bit.
Sure.
I mean, at the end of the day, I still think the Dolphins are going to have a 1 through 3 pick. That's not going to change. But in a draft where you're going to have Chase Young and Tua available at the number 1 pick,
you might end up getting who you want anyway.
The luxury of picking, not who falls to 2.
Yeah, but I mean, I do think that this was a quest for a quarterback, and if Chase Young is picked first, I think Miami would throw a party. To be honest with you, because then they get to choose from any quarterback. But if Tua is picked first, then it's like, okay, well, we already lost our choice at quarterback, and now it's Chase Young, who might be overwhelmingly better than, say, the second, third-ranked quarterbacks in the draft this year. And then it's that decision, what do you do if you're Miami? Because here's the thing. Another thing that I question about the Dolphins, why is Ryan Fitzpatrick still playing? I mean, if you're trying to figure out this quarterback situation, you got Josh Rosen sitting on the bench. What's the point?
Yeah, I mean, that O-line is just not good.
Yeah, but it's never next year, are you going to play Josh Rosen?
I don't know what their full plan for Josh Rosen is, because when they benched Fitzpatrick and it was going to be Rosen for the rest of the year, I was like, you know what, this is smart. Let's see what Rosen can give us here.
Yeah.
I mean, you might not even have to take a quarterback, but it just shows that the coach is not in tank mode, even though the organization is. He wants to win games. I mean, no one wanted to go 0-16. No one wanted that's terrible. Like, I wouldn't want to roll into the draft being 0-16.
Yeah,
that stinks. But I don't know what their plan for Josh Rosen is, but the guy goes from Arizona they were just a dumpster fire last year. Same issues. The O-line was horrible.
You got a feel for the guy.
I mean, honestly, you might even be like letting him, hey, man, just sit. And, we'll see what happens, really, but you're just going to keep shooting your confidence in the foot here. You're getting pressured every down. You have one wide receiver that is, sort of next level. He can be Devontae Parker. So I agree with it, in all honesty. Ryan Fitzpatrick keeps them in games. And going forward, they're playing harder teams anyway. The Jets aren't a good football team. But
Not at all.
I think at this point, if the Miami Dolphins do not get the first pick, I think the Cincinnati Bengals pull the trigger on Tua. All right, at the number 1. I can't imagine in a world in which that organization doesn't take a quarterback first pick.
Yeah, they need one for sure.
It just scares me as a Dolphins fan because we've never been good at draft picks. I mean, recently over the years we decided to take Charles Harris over T.J. Watt. T.J. Watt
choice.
is just. He's a beast. I would love it if T.J. Watt was on our team.
Yeah.
But, maybe he would have been traded this
And
year.
Minkah Fitzpatrick was a great pick, but he's already gone.
Fitzpatrick was a great pick. He's got 4 interceptions for the Steelers since being traded, taking them to the house. But I agree with the trade. I agree with these. If these guys didn't want to be there, they didn't want to be here. But
yeah.
I can see at this point, at the number 2 pick, if the Finns have it and Chase Young is there, I feel like they take Chase Young, and then with whatever the Steelers pick is, they take a quarterback. And I think that a guy like Justin Herbert will fall.
He might.
As the draft goes.
Yeah.
And if that Steelers pick is like an 8, a 9, 10, they can go Chase Young, Justin Herbert, and then go get a running back, O-lineman, wide receiver, cornerback with the Texans pick.
Yeah,
And
it
that's a
could
good
happen.
draft,
Yeah, for sure. So we're going to move on here, and the final 2 segments of our show today, we're going to do top 10 running backs, and then we're going to make our picks for the NFL. What week is it now in the NFL? This season's been flying by.
Should be week 10 this
Week 10.
week.
My God. So let's start. I'm going to go my top 10 running backs. At number 10, guy who was competing for the MVP, 2 years ago? Todd Gurley. I got him at number 10. So he used to be a top 5 running back in this league, but since he's gotten his knee injuries, that arthritis has really been affecting him, and he just hasn't been as intimidating as a running back for the Rams in the last few years. At number 9, I've got Aaron Jones for the Green Bay Packers. He is such an essential piece to this Green Bay offense for years. People have been saying, Green Bay, you need to get a running back, and they haven't. Finally, they have Aaron Jones. They're using him not just, kind of as a secondary option. No, they're primarily using Aaron Jones. He's kind of been the guy that's kept them in games offensively. And I know they have Aaron Rodgers, and he's an MVP candidate. But without Aaron Jones, the Green Bay Packers would not be where they are right now. At number 8, I have Nick Chubb. And I paired Kareem Hunt in here with his name. Only reason being is Kareem Hunt used to be a top 5 running back in the league too. So who knows? Maybe him paired with Chubb. Who knows what that could be in the NFL. Number 7, I've got Le'Veon Bell slipping all the way to 7. The only reason he's still in my top 10 is because his name is Le'Veon Bell. This dude used to be the number 1 running back in the league. He's transcendent. He's dynamic. He's a pass catcher. He can run. He's one of the best at eluding people in open field. He adjusts on the fly. Just a tremendous all-time running back talent in Le'Veon Bell. At number 6, third in rushing this year from the Jacksonville Jaguars, I have Leonard Fournette. This dude, he's as consistent as it gets every week. You can depend on him. Run him as much as you want. He'll keep going in there. I don't have his average yards per carry, but every time I see him, it looks like he's getting 4 or 5 yards per. And this is a dude, again, he's actually said publicly how he likes to get hit. So that's the mentality of a football player, that if you're not a football player, like, how do you even think like that? But this is a guy, he's a warrior. He's going to go down there every week, give you the same thing, same effort every week. I got him at 6. At 5, I have Dalvin Cook from the Minnesota Vikings. This man is an absolute beast. Definitely without him, the Vikings would not be where they are, because Kirk Cousins can't win a primetime game. He's just proven it. This is with 2 separate franchises now. The Redskins and the Vikings. Kirk Cousins can't win big games because he just doesn't have any part of his game that can set him apart from other people. Dalvin Cook is that guy. At number 4, I have Alvin Kamara from the New Orleans Saints. This man is also a beast. This top 5 running backs, they might be the top 5 best players, I'm not going to say in football, but you could say top 5 out of the 20 are these 5 running backs here. You have Kamara here at number 4, who with Drew Brees, That's why they're the number one team in the NFC. Kamara and Breeze and Michael Thomas might be one of the best triplets that are in the NFL right now. Last year, it was Tyreek Hill, Mahomes, and Hunt, but now that's broken up. And I think right now you've got Thomas, Breeze, and Kamara. Watch out. At number 3, I have Zeke from the Cowboys. Obviously, he's got to be a top 3 guy. You would be shocked, actually, that I have him at number 3. He deserves to be paid the money that he's being paid right now. He deservedly held out. He needed to. He was worth the money that he was asking for. Maybe I didn't agree with the decision he made, going down to Cabo and not practicing with the team, but it obviously isn't affecting him so far, as he's been the same old Zeke here in 2019. At number 2, I have Christian McCaffrey from the Carolina Panthers. The only reason I have him over Zeke is because I think the team of the Carolina Panthers isn't as successful as the Dallas Cowboys are. And when you look at the Panthers, really all they have for them is their defense. And Christian McCaffrey has literally been their entire offense. Kyle Allen has been their quarterback. He's kind of been a placeholder for Cam Newton, just kind of a system quarterback type of guy. I mean, Christian McCaffrey has single-handedly won the Carolina Panthers multiple games throughout this year. And then at number 1, I know I'm a Giants fan, but Saquon Barkley is the best running back in the National Football League. I know he's missed some games this year, but just watch a game and tell me that Saquon isn't the best running back. This man can barrel through anyone. He is physically dominant. His skills are dominant over other people. His attitude is amazing. I mean, you'd think he'd been in the league 10 years. He's so mature. He can lead this franchise for the New York Giants. And I think that, and by the way, he's a generational talent. All these other guys, they're great, but you just don't see people like Saquon Barkley. I have him at number 1. Let's go to your list, CJ.
So, full disclosure, to not upset anyone before I start, I do not have... So, I did a combination of top 10 this season and just guys that you have to have in your top 10. I do not have Le'Veon Bell in my top 10 this season because he just hasn't been a top 10 back this season. And it's not even his fault. They just haven't been using him properly. There was a little bit of drama with him and Adam Gase before the season started. Adam Gase just is not a coach that handles personalities that well. I mean, I give all credit to Mike Tomlin for handling Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, and Ben Roethlisberger on the same team for years, which I feel like they need a presence like that out in Cleveland. But I do not have Le'Veon Bell in my top 10. And to start off, I have Saquon Barkley at 10. He's a top 5 guy. Saquon Barkley is a top 5 running back. Arguably, he's a number 1. You can make an argument for it, but he's just been hurt a little bit this season. So I'm just going to highlight a few other guys that have been breakout candidates this year and guys that are just top 10 backs. But I give full credit to Saquon Barkley as a top 5 back. So number 9, I have Derrick Henry.
Okay.
I don't really know where that Tennessee Titans offense would be without his running game.
That's a great point.
I mean, they're similar to the Patriots in which, Sony Michel is their bruiser back, and he's going to get the carries, and he's going to be in between the tackles. And then they've got James White. And the Tennessee Titans have Dion Lewis that takes the reception. He's the out-of-the-backfield kind of guy. If he enters the game, he's going to get a quick block and then go out for a quick dump-off. But Derrick Henry is just the lead guy out there. He's way faster than he looks. And as I said, I don't know where the Titans offense would be without him. I mean, they got a quarterback controversy going on over there. Don't really know who's the guy there. So at least they've got a steady rock back there at running back. Number 8, I have Chris Carson. Chris Carson fumbling has been an issue. Fantasy owners hate that. Pete Carroll kind of puts him in the doghouse on the goal line because of it.
Yep.
I mean, the fumbling issue is pretty detrimental in terms of a touchdown stance, but people overlook that he is 5th in the league in rushing due to the fact that Russ has just had an unreal, like Russell Wilson's the MVP candidate, probably clear-cut number 1 there. And so Chris Carson's actually had a very good year.
So at number 7,
number 7, we have Aaron Jones.
Okay, yep.
Aaron Jones, he's been dynamic in every way for Rodgers in that offense. He's not a huge rushing yard guy, top 10 rushing yard guy, but just you watch Aaron Rodgers and Aaron Jones play together, and what he does after the catch, what he does in the second level is next level stuff, and he totally deserves to be a top 10 back. And not that we're basing this list off of fantasy football, but he's top 5 fantasy football running back this year. Pretty much.
And sorry to interrupt, but he reminds me a lot of Marshawn Lynch, kind of that tough-nosed guy, like a bulldozer type of running back as well.
Yeah. So then at 6, I have Ezekiel Elliott, sort of having a down year. top 5 potential, top 3 potential, number 1 potential back. But I feel like that offseason and that drama with Jerry Jones kind of hurt. The offensive line isn't getting the same push as they did the past couple years, and Dak Prescott hasn't been helping him out. If the quarterback's not throwing the ball well down the field, putting a lot of pressure on your running back who's running in between the tackles. I feel the league has shifted from that era of running backs where it's like, he's an every down guy, feed it to him 3 times. Not that Zeke can't do that. Zeke's a tank, but he's just having a little bit of a down year, but not going to disrespect the guy. He could easily be a number 1 back. It's just his statistics aren't there. Number 5, I have Leonard Fournette. He's 3rd in rushing in the league. My knock on him going into the year was he wasn't the best out of the backfield. A guy, from your running backs, you want them to be multidimensional. You want them to get out of the pocket, catch a pass, get downfield. Because if you
especially
get a guy
in today's game,
you get a guy like Fournette who catches the ball and can get to the second level, and he's running downhill like that. That's big for your team. But he's totally silenced all those critics. He has only 2 receptions under Christian McCaffrey on the season. Probably didn't know that. A lot of people probably didn't know that, but he's having a good year out of the backfield. He's number 5, plus he's 3rd in rushing. Number 4, I'm giving it to Nick Chubb, up and coming back, and he's looked beyond deadly this year. I disagree with all the people that are stuffing Kareem Hunt on their team. I feel bad for them because when Kareem Hunt comes back, even if he takes a few carries, there's not going to be a 50-50 split. It won't even be 60-40. Doubt it's even 70-30.
Yeah, but Kareem was top 5 when he was there.
Nick Chubb's that good. Nick Chubb is incredible.
We'll see.
Nick Chubb is just he's a real deal. And if I'm a Browns fan, there was a lot to be excited about going into the season. During the season, hasn't been much to be excited about. But Nick Chubb is one of those guys. Season's not necessarily over for them. 2-6, they kind of have to win out, and they have I think top 5 easiest schedules going forward.
Well, they got Buffalo and Baltimore again, and I think those are both losses.
But outside of those teams, it's cupcake. It's a cakewalk.
Yeah.
But yeah, falling behind 2-6 isn't very good. But I will say they started off the year playing the Rams, Patriots. I think they play the 49ers too.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, come on. That's just a really tough schedule. And then number 3, Alvin Kamara. He's unreal. He very well could be number 1. I like him out of all the elite pass-catching backs. I like him the most in the run game.
Wow, okay.
He's missed a few weeks, but you watch Kamara, and he just bounces off tackles. He is so difficult to tackle. He can lower his shoulder. He's a do-it-all back. I really wish he didn't miss the time that he missed. He could be a number 1 on the list. But, number 3, still a top 3 guy. And then number 2 coming in here, Dalvin Cook.
Ooh.
Dalvin Cook, I feel bad for him injury-wise the last couple of years.
Yeah.
But number 1 rusher in the league right now. There's a lot to say about this guy. Between the tackles, he's incredible. The explosive speed, he's patient, waits for the hole. Second the hole opens up, boom, he's gone. Big play running back. He's like a vintage back mixed in with a new era feel to him.
Yeah.
He's really, really, really good. I like Dalvin Cook a lot. And then number 1, Christian McCaffrey. I don't even know what his scrimmage yards are. He's got 881 yards rushing, and then catching yards 363. So he's above 1,000 yards, well above 1,000 yards here halfway through the year. So to break that, he'll probably be around 2,500 yards from scrimmage when the year's over. That's incredible. So no surprise there that he's number 1. He's 2nd in rushing, only by 13 yards behind Dalvin Cook, which is pretty remarkable because people categorize him as a pass-catching back. But, he does it all. And he's, that's another guy, take him out of the Carolina Panthers offense. They might be a team that's a 1-win, 2-win team.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So thank you for the list there, CJ. That was great. We disagreed a little bit, but one thing I should have mentioned before we did those running back rankings, unlike the quarterbacks where, the talent kind of dips off at 13, 14, you go down to the mid-20s. At number 20, I have Tevin Coleman from the San Francisco 49ers. And this dude is dependable back there for San Francisco. Him and Breida have been a great combo. I have Sony Michel at 14. You got Mark Ingram all the way down at 17. These are guys.
Where do you have Marlon Mack?
I got Marlon Mack at 16 with David Johnson at 15 and Ingram at 17.
Okay.
But you know what? I would be willing to reorder almost my entire, I would say, 11 through 20, or 11 even through 21, because all those guys, you could argue either way. You know, it's kind of like one of those lists where it's just the number that determines the list. It's not even, that big of a difference. It's just that there's so many talented guys. That's the way you got to rank them.
And then obviously Lamar Jackson. Yeah,
right. Yeah, no, he's the best running back in football. And then, so now we're going to do really quickly here NFL picks, rapid fire. This is going to be a great week in the NFL. A lot of great games. I think last week we picked Monday night. Both of us had the Cowboys. Not really going to be any contention there, right? I mean, I would probably have the Cowboys tonight, right?
I like Daniel Jones a lot. I'm a Daniel Jones believer, and it's not hard to be a believer. His stats are pretty good right now. Who's home? It is in
New York, so it'll be closer than people think, but Dallas will win.
The last time Dallas Cowboys were in New York, they got trounced by the Jets. So anything can happen. You never know.
Hey, you never know.
This Cowboys team, you really don't. I don't think it's going to be a shoe-in Cowboys win where they just come in, destroy you, and leave. It's not going to be like that. I think it's going to be much closer than expected. But, I wish Daniel Jones had a better receiving core right now. It's not even his fault or the team. They're just battling injuries. So I think it'll be close. What do you have a spread there by any chance?
Yeah, let's see. Let's go back to Week 9 here. The spread is minus 6.5 on Dallas.
Okay, I like 6.5 points if I'm a Giants better, if you will. But I would take the Cowboys. Yeah, that's a safe bet there. But I would not at all put it this way. I will take the Cowboys, but won't be just surprised whatsoever if the Giants take it.
Yep,
it's at home.
Look, division games, it's going to happen. You face a team twice a year. It's tough to beat anyone twice in 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
So Thursday Night Football this week, the LA Chargers are going to Oakland to face the Raiders. I picked Oakland over Detroit last week. Detroit they were a little banged up. They lost a bunch of close games in a row. But this week, Oakland's getting the Chargers. They just beat the Packers at home. I think the Raiders are going to take another one here, and it might shock people, but this team's been playing teams really close all year. Derek Carr is still probably a top 13, 14 quarterback in the league. Josh Jacobs has been a borderline top 10 running back and might win Rookie of the Year. They have Tyrell Williams at wide receiver, Darren Waller at tight end. They've got some dudes in Oakland, so I'm going to pick them over the Chargers. You got the same thing?
No, I do not. So
okay.
before this week started, I would have said Raiders next week. Not for sure, but I do agree. I like the way Derek Carr is playing, and Josh Jacobs looks great, and Waller is a top 5 tight end in the league right now. But the Chargers looked really good against the Packers. And everybody knows vintage Phillip Rivers teams they stumble out of the gates and then somehow sneak into the playoffs second half of the year. They're one of the best teams always second half of the year. And this is the first or second week of the second half of the year. And I think the Chargers start off with a win. The Raiders, it's a toss-up game. It's Raiders getting a point. So really it's 50-50 there. I would take the Chargers.
All right, so we got Lions, Bears, minus 2.5 for the Bears. I got Detroit. Chicago just can't score. Mitch Trubisky, like I said last week, he just looks awful out there. He can't even complete, more than 3 passes in a row. He can't throw more than 10, 15 yards. I mean, I don't know how he's even drafted. I don't even want to go into a Trubisky rant right now. Lions over Bears for me. You got the same thing? Again, I'm not denying that Bears defense. I mean, Khalil Mack and that defense can stop anyone, but Chicago just can't score.
I've really, really, really liked Matt Stafford this year.
Me as well, yeah.
I feel like we're going to see a old Matt Stafford performance because this defense is incredible. They're playing on the road. The Lions playing a dome. They're going to go to Chicago, play in the cold at Soldier Field. Really tough place to play. I'm going to take the Bears here.
Okay, all right. Ravens, Bengals. I don't think we even need to discuss this one. Bengals in tank mode. We got the Bills at the Browns, minus 2.5 for Cleveland. I got Buffalo. Listen, Cleveland just went to Denver, and they couldn't beat a quarterback who had never taken a snap in the NFL before. This Buffalo defense is going to swarm Baker Mayfield, who really can't do anything under pressure. We've seen I watched Greg Cosell on Fox Sports 1. He's an NFL films producer, and he was saying that he saw a tendency from Baker. Every time he's put under pressure, he just runs to the right and tries to get rid of it, and that's been a pattern for him all season. That's all Buffalo does. They pressure you. Cleveland's not going to have fun on Sunday. What about you, CJ?
I don't know how I'm basically taking the opposite of you, 3 straight picks here, but I got the Browns here. I mean, going back home, okay, I feel like they're gonna have a bunch of team meetings. I'm hoping Baker Mayfield sits down with Jarvis and Odell in the offense and just hashes out whatever the issue is there.
There's something there.
I do not like Freddie Kitchens at all as a coach. I don't care whatever run they get on here. They could go 8 straight wins and go 10-6. I would still say Cleveland, get a new coach.
Right.
Okay. But I like the Browns here on a bounce back. The Bills, they underwhelm all the time against opposition that might be better than them or have a roster that might be a little bit better than them, and in must-win games, and when teams are desperate and they play the Bills, I feel like teams can really exploit their not that this is a primetime game, but this is a premier matchup.
Right.
The Browns still have a really good roster. I like the Browns here. I think Baker Mayfield has a bounce-back game.
One thing to take note of, too, to support your argument, I mean, Josh Allen throws a lot of picks.
Yeah, the Browns defense is stacked. I mean, I don't know how many years in a row they had top 5 draft picks, and they, for the most part, they picked defensive guys. I think Myles Garrett's going to get after Josh Allen. Josh Allen's good out of the pocket, but I like the Browns.
All right, so we got Chiefs at the Titans. No spread on the game that I see anywhere, but I got the Chiefs even without Mahomes. Really, again, I don't really think I need to even support that. The Chiefs are just better in every category than the Titans. I got them on the road.
Titans getting 3.5 points, but I like the Chiefs also. I think Mahomes plays this week anyway. But
yeah, probably.
I don't know what's going on with the Titans quarterback situation. It's just...
Well, either way, they're playing the same guy. I mean, Mariota and Tannehill are almost the identical type of guy.
Yep.
So Falcons and Saints, another one. I don't think we even need to discuss it. Saints are going to win. We got Giants at the Jets on Sunday at 1 o'clock. Jets are considered the home team, even though they play in the same stadium. I think the Giants are going to take that one. The Jets are just a tire fire right now.
Giants for sure. I think whenever the Jets are brought up, you need to start asking yourself how long Adam Gase is going to be the head coach there.
Yeah, and I'm not usually for in-season firings, but this one would kind of make sense because he's not getting along with anyone.
I mean, they were shopping guys like Quinnen Williams at the trade deadline. That's your number 3 overall pick. I mean, I don't get it. I don't know what's going on over there. The Giants are going to win that game by a landslide.
We got this one's really intriguing to me. Arizona at Tampa Bay. Arizona's 3-5-1. Tampa's 2-6. But Tampa just played Seattle really close. They lost 40-34 in OT, and Tampa was leading, I think, 21-0 at one point. But of course, Russell Wilson happened.
It was like 21-7.
Yeah, 21-7. And so the spread is -4 for Tampa. Again, it is in Tampa. I'm going with Tampa Bay. Like I said, they played Seattle close. Listen, Jameis, a lot like Josh Allen, he throws way too many picks, turns the ball over. But I don't see Kyler and Arizona going on the road and winning this game. I just don't see it.
So the thing about the Buccaneers is the first half, they will look like a Super Bowl team. They will look like, oh my gosh, this team is legit. To go into Seattle and, Russell Wilson and the whole, whatever they got going on there, I mean, they're 6-2, 6-1, whatever their record is. The Buccaneers come in and they put up 21. Like, they go 3 for 4 on their first couple possessions and they're scoring touchdowns. They look great. But when you're someone on the outside looking in, you're like, I know the Bucs are somehow going to screw this up.
Yep.
And they do. And I really like Kyler Murray and the Cardinals. And before this week and them putting up 25 on the 49ers and being very close to winning that football game, I probably would have picked the Bucs. But I'm actually going to take Kyler Murray and the Cardinals here. They're much better than people give credit to. And that Kyler Murray-Kenyon Drake duo back there,
that was a great trade.
Great.
Yeah.
And, I mean, to get Kenyon Drake for, I think, like a 5th-round conditional pick, I mean, great business there. I like the Cardinals.
Agreed there. So another game, probably not much discussion here. In Miami at Indianapolis. I got Indianapolis.
Yeah, well, Jacoby Brissett's out. They're starting Brian Hoyer.
Really?
Brissett got injured. I thought Brissett had a pretty bad knee injury, and I don't think they're going to even if they can potentially play him this weekend, I don't think they will.
Yeah.
So
here's the thing: the Colts still have one of the best rosters in total in the NFL.
I still take the Colts. But
yeah.
I think it's going to be a better game it's going to be a much better game than it is if Jacoby Brissett was playing.
Agreed. And so 4:25 on Fox in Lambeau. It's Carolina at Green Bay. Carolina's a good team, but Green Bay is just much better, especially coming off after a loss. You don't want to play Aaron Rodgers after a loss, so they're going to win, I think, big at home.
I'm sure the Aaron Rodgers' record coming off a loss is tremendously good.
Yeah.
So I would take the Packers, and it's Packers giving 5 points. I think that's a bargain.
Right, and then we got Rams at Pittsburgh. I know Pittsburgh just beat Indianapolis, but that was kind of a fluke game. Let's just be honest; they're not going to beat Jared Goff and Todd Gurley this weekend.
Yep, I agree.
So then we got this is a great game here. Sunday Night Football, Minnesota at Dallas. These next two games are great. So this game's in Arlington. Dallas, it's a -3 for Dallas. I'm actually going to go with Minnesota. Minnesota here, and I know I just went with the whole, Kirk Cousins never wins primetime games, but the Vikings are a better version of the Dallas Cowboys. I think they're very similar. You have Dallas, right? Amari Cooper and Randall Cobb. They've got two dependable wide receivers. Well, so does Minnesota, Thielen and Diggs. You have Zeke versus Cook. Pretty even right there. But then it's like, okay, well, maybe in a one-game matchup, Kirk Cousins might be able to outplay a Dak Prescott, especially considering that Minnesota defense is probably a little bit better than Dallas's.
Yeah, I like the Vikings on Sunday Night Football here. Kirk Cousins does have a little bit of a curse on primetime football games, but
a lot like Andy Dalton.
Yeah, but I like the Vikings here solely off the fact that you never know what you're going to get from Dallas, and I don't think Jason Garrett's going to last another year there.
Hopefully not.
I don't like Jason Garrett coaching against top opposition, and the Vikings look very good this year. I know they just lost to Kansas City, but I like the Vikings on a bounce-back game here.
Agreed. And finally, Monday Night Football next week, and I'm sure we'll discuss it a little bit more next Monday as well. Seattle going to San Francisco. San Francisco's 8-0. They're going to try and stay undefeated, and I think they will. They just keep proving it over and over and over again. Again, Emmanuel Sanders, now they have a legit receiver. They've got that running back tandem. George Kittle, probably the best tight end in football over Travis Kelce at this point, just physically dominating. That defense, D Ford, Quan Alexander sadly out for the year, but still Richard Sherman, Nick Bosa might win Rookie of the Year, playing tremendous defense this year. I've got San Francisco.
So here's what's going to happen. Russell Wilson's going to beat the 49ers. And I'm saying this because Kyler Murray had a great week against the 49ers, and Kyler Murray is a quarterback that gets out of the pocket. He makes his plays on the run. He's going to get rushing yards. And, Russell Wilson isn't as fast and dynamic out of the pocket as Kyler Murray can be, but Russell Wilson's a much better thrower outside of the pocket. And if the 49ers bring the house a lot, they've got a great front seven, Russell Wilson's going to get out of that pocket. He's going to make a living that night on throwing the ball to Lockett, Metcalf down the field, and
underrated guys, too.
The Seahawks Metcalf has been a great pickup for whoever drafted him.
Yeah.
And I like Russell Wilson to beat the 49ers, and then my Miami Dolphins, the 1972 Miami Dolphins, are going to get together for their annual steak dinner when that final undefeated team loses, and I will be able to sleep at night knowing that it's only the 1972 Miami Dolphins undefeated.
Oh, gosh. Well, this was a fantastic show, CJ. Again, I think we discussed basically everything happening right now in sports, and that's the point. Like we said, we want to stick to sports here, talk about it as much as we can. Usually this show goes from 4 to 5, but we were talking so much today we went 24 minutes over. One other thing I would like to add, I had this Yankee lecture last week, Yankee rant, I should say, at the end. I said the Yankees should let go of Edwin Encarnacion and Didi Gregorius. Well, they already let go of Encarnacion. He's now a free agent. And just a few minutes ago, the Yankees, or let's see here, I believe, the Yankees did not extend a qualifying offer to Didi Gregorius, their shortstop, and he is now a free agent, meaning either Didi is going to have to sign a new contract with the Yankees or he's going somewhere else. And if I'm the Yankees, it's time to move off Didi. I love the guy, but you got to let him go at this point. So that's it for a fantastic second episode here of Strictly Sports. For CJ Uri, I'm Jacob Browne. We'll see you guys next week again at 4 o'clock p.m. here on FAU Owl Radio. Again, if you missed the live feed and want to catch the beginning, you can follow our Twitter page at Strict Sports FAU, not Strictly Sports. That was too long of a username. It's Strict Sports FAU. You'll see the link to the YouTube channel, and in a few hours, I'll have that uploaded on YouTube for all of you guys to listen. Again, thank you to everyone who's tuned in. over these last 2 episodes. We only hope to keep continuing our fan base. Again, anyone who wants to come on the show, we'll have you on. Athletes, students, we're open to anyone. So for this episode of Strictly Sports, for CJ Uri, I'm Jacob Browne, and we'll see you next week.